So what does an academic like me have to say to you all that could be useful? Well, maybe not much. But I'm going to talk a lot about collaboration, as Rob mentioned, and I'm going to talk about the Competency Handbook. I didn't even bring a copy of it, which our publisher will probably be furious with me. I'm going to talk about a book and not bring a copy. But the rationale for that is kind of talking about the body of knowledge for this discipline, as well as the CE department at CFPBOARD is always on the talks that I give to make sure that I think this has been audited by CFPBOARD, and I'm a CFP employee. So we'll have that in there to make sure everybody gets CE credit. So this is one of my favorite slides. I'll let you read it quickly. So I found this somewhere, and it's this idea of theory and practice is an important subject in a lot of disciplines, but certainly this one. So I'm a doctor of education. I come from ed, curriculum and instruction, and higher ed policy and whatnot, and certainly is a practitioner-based profession, and not unlike financial planning, which is also a practitioner-based profession. And so the requirements of this discipline to really work and become a profession, which a lot of financial planners are sensitive to that notion of being a profession, and we at CFPBOARD believe that we are helping facilitate the growth and the development of this profession. All those things, that they kind of go hand in hand, a body of knowledge and a bunch of different attributes that I'm going to talk about today. So I'm going to talk about academia and practice. I'm going to talk about kind of what the foundations are of a profession and what we can do together to kind of further it, and then I'm going to talk about the book in general terms. So why is it important to collaborate? And in a lot of cases, when I talk with practitioners and I give these sessions, the practitioners kind of say, well, the academics are kind of theoretical and they don't quite understand what's going on in practice. And the academics say, well, the practitioners don't always test what they're doing and how they quantify success is exactly what we're thinking and whatnot. But there's a really important bridge that needs to happen between those. And both entities need each other, I think, more desperately than perhaps ever. I'll talk about involvement in programs and in support of the programs. So why is it important for practice? Well, you can see this data that comes from Department of Labor Statistics. There is a huge need right now for individuals to go into this growing profession within the next several years, like right now. I visit probably on average somewhere between 50 and 75 campuses a year, and what I hear more often than not is that there are 6 times as many positions available than there are students graduating from the programs. And I'll argue that the responsibility for filling those positions lies on both sides of that, and CFPBOARD certainly has a place at the table there, and I'll talk specifically about that in just a second. That's unlike a lot of other disciplines, right? I mean, so when I come and visit a campus, in a lot of cases I'll be speaking with a dean, and the dean will be talking about cutting some other programs because there aren't any opportunities for placement, as universities are being held accountable with regard to making sure that the individuals that are graduating from a program of study are taking a position that's related to that program of study. The government is following this, accreditors are following it. The SACS is the accreditor here that oversees the southern schools, and they're looking at this very closely. We don't have that problem. We've got lots of positions, so it's an exciting time, and it's counter to what's happening across higher education right now. So where are we as a profession? So I kept hearing the term profession when I took this position, and so I wrote a white paper when I first got to CFPBOARD, kind of talking about, well, what are the attributes of a profession? What is it? And it really kind of comes down to 4 different areas. There's professional schools, which is what this is, where we are right now, and the work that we do together. A recognized need for that expertise that comes from that school, so people have to need it. You can't be really good at something and nobody want it. You're not really a professional. No one's going to pay you to do it. Some sort of code of ethics, and certainly a professional association. So I took this quote. I think it speaks really well to the work that we do in education. I have no idea who Felix Frankfurter was, by the way, so I can't provide any more than that. But I would say that it speaks well to essentially what the schools are, is what makes the individuals that go on and and build the profession. So our schools, here's a breakdown of our programs right now. And it's interesting when I meet with practitioners, in a lot of cases, they don't even know that we have more than like 3 programs, which really surprises me. Even our CFP professionals don't have an idea of how many CFP board registered programs we have. We're at 361, and you see the growth here. And this has a lot to do with that idea of placement, right? That there are all these opportunities, and universities are very interested in these placement opportunities, as well as collaborating with all of you practitioners in formal and informal ways. So they're developing programs. And it's moving a lot faster than actually what I can keep up with. Our baccalaureate programs have risen over 33% in just 4 years. And, you know, in higher education, things don't really move quickly. But this is moving quickly. I mean, we're seeing programs that probably 5 years ago in a lot of different colleges and universities would never have considered financial planning are now. It's a fantastic time. And I've had deans at some of those institutions say, my faculty would have never gone for financial planning. They thought that it was an outside discipline, but now we're going to welcome it for some of the reasons that I've already mentioned. Our certificate programs have kind of stayed the same. And, you know, those of you that are CFPs and graduated from a certificate program, you were part of that initial wave. And we still have a large number of our exam takers coming from non-degree programs. And in the 90s and into the early 2000s, that was just about all of our CFPs came from that. They were mid-career professionals that knew that the CFP was beneficial to what it was that they were doing from a competency and from an ethics perspective and whatnot. And they got the designation. That's starting to change now. We're starting to see more programs at the degree level. The doctoral programs are growing, and we're very excited about that because we need more faculty to obviously do research, and we need more faculty to fill some of all these new programs that we're developing. The University of Missouri has been on the forefront of that as a doctoral program for several years now, and they've been ahead of the curve. This institution has been ahead of the curve, and certainly, if you're not aware of it, this institution is a national leader in financial planning, education, and research, and as again, we're excited about that partnership. So with all these programs in Development 52, there's a desperate need for faculty. So if you're thinking about a PhD, you're here at the University of Missouri, I would talk to Dr. Wigley and enroll, because the placement right now for faculty is, you get a position quite quickly, as a matter of fact. So the preparation programs are evolving considerably. And looking at what it was that an individual that graduated from a CFP board registered program even 10 years ago and what they can do now, if you compare those, the differences are quite stark. The competency level is higher. Certainly elements such as communication, there's a lot of psychology being embedded within these programs. Obviously, the areas like estate planning and tax and investments are still there. We're growing this body of knowledge, and we're doing a lot of really great research and collaboration with our faculty and having a better understanding of what's going on in practice to prepare individuals to go on. Dr. Wigley mentioned experiential learning, and we're seeing that. You know, we have a faculty, for the most part, that have a really good understanding of what's going on in practice and can apply theoretical concepts very well into contextual situations, and not just in an internship, and not just in some sort of formal practicum. But we're seeing a lot of cases, cases that essentially would start at a fundamentals class in course 1 that have specific areas, specific scenarios and context, and that's being followed through an investments class, through an estate planning class, and whatnot until the capstone course, and they're seeing how each one of those subject areas impact this one particular case. So it's a great example of bringing some of this theoretical knowledge to life. That we're seeing a lot more diversity in our programs. So I have some counterparts that work in university oversight and some other areas, and we joke that the area that I have is by far the most diverse. So we have for-profit institutions, we have tier 1 institutions, we have non-degree programs all the way to doctoral programs. So it's very, very diverse. From our perspective at CFP Board, we really don't have an issue with the type of institution that we partner. They have to be regionally accredited and whatnot, but we're looking at competency and we're looking at strong programs. So we don't really get into having more one program over another. I will probably say the exception to that is at the doctoral level, just given the fact that we need more individuals to go and lead some of our new programs that are coming. So in 2012, as many of you may be aware, we announced, or implemented actually, we announced in 2010, but implemented the Financial Plan Development course, which essentially is called the Capstone course. And this was a major change in our curriculum and certainly our requirements for meeting the education component for CFP certification. Having to take a 45-hour class and the individual having to develop and communicate a comprehensive financial plan was a big step. Now, this institution was way ahead of that in developing a capstone course, not because they had to, but because they thought it was the right thing to do. But having all the other programs do that was a major step, and I think very contextual and very important, especially if you're thinking about students at the baccalaureate level having to do this for the first time. So it was a major step forward in our competency area. Cases, obviously, were part of that, an oral written plan, and certainly have an understanding of the steps that are involved in the financial planning process. So we're seeing a lot of labs popping up right now in some of our programs, certainly the use of software and thinking about a holistic approach to financial planning. So looking at that from a competency perspective, we really do see those 21-year-olds coming out as being a great resource to practice, and that's why the profession is really looking at hiring some of those individuals. Now, it may be that they're not going to be 21 years old and have a client that's 60 and they're interfacing with them. That may not work, but what some of the larger firms are doing is putting them as part of a team and being that CFP on the team, and maybe they're developing a plan, but they're not necessarily going to be communicating or interfacing with clients all the time. And when I first started this position, my engagement was entirely with the colleges and universities, but in the past, I would say probably year and a half, I've engaged a lot of large firms because they're desperate right now for hiring new people, and there are lots of different reasons for that. The average age is right around 58 or 59, and so many of these large firms are terrified of who the next generation is going to be, who's going to fill these positions. And there are a lot of issues here. I think one of them is how these individuals are inducted into the profession and who they're hiring. So for example, in some large firms, they'll hire 25 people and maybe 10 of them are graduates of CFP board registered programs. And 15 of them are art history majors and whatnot. And I spoke to a group of large firms that we hosted in November and told them that we'll never be a profession, ever, until industry, until our practice hires graduates exclusively from our programs. You can't have somebody come out of the University of Missouri, finish what is a very difficult program of study, take a position and be sitting next to someone that knows nothing about financial planning. It's not going to work. And I see practice now, this engagement that we've had over the past year and a half, saying, maybe we need to rethink our orientation model. And let's get out of this word training, because it's not training, it's a profession. Let's talk about induction, and let's talk about seeing individuals come out who have this level of expertise, and let's get them contributing sooner. And in a lot of cases, the firms will say, well, we need more students than what the universities can provide. And I really believe that once industry makes that commitment and says we will hire graduates, even if they say graduates preferred of the programs, the colleges and universities will meet that demand. But there has to be a commitment there. And I'll talk about some of the things that we're doing to try to make that connection between universities and practice. So our programs, just as a continue this long overview, our programs are housed in essentially 4 different areas. So you've got continuing education, the business schools, or agricultural economics, or human ecology, and family and consumer sciences. It's a very diverse group. And our largest growth area is within the colleges of business, by far. So going back to that number of 52 programs in development, 3/4 of those are from the business schools. They bring with them challenges and opportunities both. And some of the different programs, certainly thinking about places like human ecology and family and consumer sciences and all those programs, they're decades ahead when it comes to communication. And the business schools will tell you that. They've been doing it for a long time. colleges like this one have been talking about communications, have been talking about client-centered approaches for a long time, and the business schools are still working to catch up with that. And so that's why we see that diversity as being absolutely important. So talking about this body of knowledge, one of the things that we're doing that we announced about a month ago is an academic journal and a center for financial planning. So this is still work. We still have to go through board approval with this, but we really believe that having an academic journal that is a clearinghouse for research that's focused exclusively on financial planning, and that is something that will be accessible to all of our CFP professionals and help drive practice as well as be a professional home for faculty is a must. We believe that that's very, very important. The faculty of all of our, not all of our programs, but a large sum of our programs, they have to have a place to publish. It's publish or perish. And so if we don't have a place for our faculty to publish, then our faculty won't be there to lead our programs. And if we don't have programs, then we won't have students. And if we don't have students, we don't have CFPs. So it's really important that we build that body of knowledge, but it's also important as we continue to expand our partnerships with colleges and universities. So thinking about this idea of professional experience and empirical study as we challenge a lot of the different assumptions that come in practice, and that we develop action research, which is a term that we don't really talk about a lot in financial planning. We talk a lot about it in education, where you have a practitioner and you have a local researcher or a researcher at one of the local universities working together on research projects, and the practitioners providing that area where the research can be done, and the faculty members helping with the methodology and whatnot. And we think that action research is really, really important, because then you've got research ideas and you've got research methods that can be applicable to practice, and they're not just abstract notions, but they're things that can really help individuals improve what they're doing. So again, as I mentioned, this idea of a team approach, that, you know, I see what's happening right now with the firms is that they're trying to take this high level of expertise that our graduates have from our programs, and finding ways to develop them and get them engaged as soon as possible, and not necessarily just build a book in a couple of years and sink or swim. So one of the firms that I'm working with is a large national firm, and they spend $60 million a year on new advisor training. And the completion rate of that program is less than 30%. And their average age is pushing 60. And so they called me and said, we're nervous, what do we do? And so we're looking at ways to try to see those folks come in and doing more financial planning, salaried from the very beginning, but already have that level of expertise so they don't have to spend $60 million in this training model. And maybe send some of that money to the University of Missouri to help fund the program, and work with the University of Missouri to take coursework and whatnot that's software and whatnot that's going to help them jump in and hit the ground running. It's a nice plug for the University of Missouri and giving money, right, Dr. Lincoln? So the second point, going back to this idea of a profession, is a code of ethics. So, you know, medicine was one of the first ones to do this in the 17th century, and you know, they had all these people that were, I guess this is kind of applicable today, you know, in the 17th century, all these people that were trained in some way in medicine were upset because there were all these people performing all kinds of strange medical procedures on patients and whatnot, and so they decided to come up with a code of ethics to help that profession. And I use I don't know if you know the example of the Space Shuttle Challenger in 1986. That obviously was a crash, but there was an issue with an engineer there that essentially there were some O-rings, I guess, that the contractor suspected. It was very cold that day, and the contractor suspected that those O-rings weren't going to work under those cold conditions. And the day they delayed the launch a couple of times for a variety of different reasons, and the contractor was up late at night thinking, I need to say something about this, what do I do? And he called, I guess, one of the head people at NASA and said, I have a real concern about this. Well, I don't think we should launch. And one of the people that were the heads of NASA said, you know, I need you to think more like a businessman and not like an engineer. And that was a major step after all that happened, of looking at a code of ethics, because now a code of ethics, it's not the pressure on the individual practitioner anymore to state that case, but the code of ethics guides those decision making and guides the decision making and whatnot. Our code of ethics at CFPBOARD, I won't get into it specifically. Everybody in the room, I think, is aware of it, but that's an important piece. And certainly in the last several years, as there's been a lot of issues in the financial area, that code of ethics has been excellent for our financial planning professionals. And as all you know, our enforcement strategies are quite fierce as we make sure that our individuals are competently and ethically serving the American public. The third point, professional associations, providing unity to practitioners and bringing individuals together, exchanging ideas and whatnot. And we have a lot of different examples of that in this profession, but most notably the Financial Planning Association in NAPFA. So as all that as kind of a background, advisory boards are a really great way for practitioners to get involved. And in a lot of cases, our institutions don't leverage that enough. I would say on evaluating all of our programs, I would say probably less than 33% of our programs have an advisory board. And that's a missed opportunity. And certainly having the opportunity myself to participate in yesterday's conversation with the advisory board, it's a great example of one that can engage future employers as well as provide all kinds of different types of resources and suggestions for the program. The capstone course is a great opportunity for practitioners to get involved with the program from a curriculum instruction perspective. So in a lot of cases, that presentation of the comprehensive plan, you can bring practitioners in with a faculty member and evaluate them. In a lot of cases, it's good to just offer maybe some written feedback and not necessarily be part of the grading process, but that feedback can be very, very helpful. And in a lot of cases, students get positions after that. So they give a great comprehensive plan at the end of the capstone course, and they get hired because they did such a great job. Certainly resources to the programs are really, really important. I use the analogy a lot, which sometimes isn't very popular with firms, but this idea of access. And I know access is something that's talked about on this campus and about every other one, the idea of access to graduates. So given the fact that there's this huge need for future CFP professionals, how can firms access those students? And the analogy I give is, at the College of Engineering, if Boeing wants to hire the graduates at the College of Engineering, they don't just show up, but they develop a relationship with the faculty, with the program, and they contribute in lots of different ways. And certainly monetarily is part of that, but it's also, having a commitment to the students finishing CFP certification. Next week, actually, on April 30th, CFPBOARD will be releasing to every one of our 361 programs a report. And in that report, per institution will say what the graduates of that program have done relative to certification after they graduate. So did they even have an account with us? Did they take the exam? Did they pass the exam? And are they certified? That report will go to the faculty and to the dean essentially as a measuring stick to the programs regarding aftercare of their graduates. And what we'll be asking our programs to do is to develop strategies to improve those numbers. So what does that mean for practice? Well, what it means is, going back to this idea of relationships, is that I think most of our programs are already, but they definitely will be now, looking at firms who are going to support their students finishing CFP certification, because that's obviously a big variable there. If the firm's going to support it, and in some cases, whether it's paying for the exam or whatever it might be, that's going to have a huge impact on those numbers. So I think faculty are going to be more sensitive to those relationships as we go forward. For the first time this year at our registered program conference, which is essentially the meeting of our universities, we're actually hosting a firms night. And because of this importance of this relationship and that we see it as vital to our collaboration, we'll be hosting national and regional firms to come to our conference and have one-on-one meetings with our colleges and universities to develop partnerships that are going to be beneficial to both sides. This is the first time we're trying it. We don't really want this to just be kind of an open-ended or informal reception, but we want there to be some deliberative dialogue. So on April 9th, I gave a webinar to the firms and talked with them about preparing for this night. So what exactly is it that they're looking for? What is it that they're willing to give up? And how are they going to present that? Are they going to talk about career tracking? Are they going to talk about resources to the programs? Are they interested in serving on an advisory board? What are they looking for as far as employees go? You know, are they willing to, do they want to see a practice management course in one of our programs? And if they're looking for a course, how much are they willing to spend to the university to get it? And then next week I'll do a webinar for our colleges and universities, and I'm going to tell them the same thing. How can they prepare for that? What are they looking for? What are they willing to give up? Are they willing to offer a course that the firm might look for and whatnot? And let's have some deliberative dialogue that can be beneficial for everyone. We'll present some models of that beforehand to give folks some ideas, but I think it's a really important first step in kind of meeting this need in the profession. Practitioner is obviously supportive of the FPA student chapter like this one, providing internships. I mentioned that idea of career tracking, and I would say that if you're a practitioner and you're not sure about that, please feel free to contact us and contact me to talk about that notion of developing a career track. I think there are some very innovative models out there that can be really, really helpful in getting that new hire from year 1 to year 5 and whatnot. Because this is what students in universities are talking about right now. They're going to be asking about that, and I think there's some ways that we could work together to accomplish that need. And obviously, as I mentioned, that commitment to hire graduates of the program. I think that's a vital step in building this discipline. So I don't even have a copy of the book with me. They're so heavy. So I brought 2 and gave one to the dean and the provost. But I do want to talk about it initially from a CE perspective. So we finished this book. How many of you have looked at this book, by the way? Oh, one person. Oh, why don't you tell us all about it? So we released this last year. Did you enjoy the book? Really? It is the best doorstop in the country. I mean, it's nice and thick. It holds up. Wiley will really appreciate me saying that. So the reason why we did this wasn't to make any money, and that's a good thing because we haven't. But the reason why we did it was basically to help build this body of knowledge. And so in the first edition, essentially what I wanted to do here is kind of say, here's where we are relative to our ed requirements. So we require 78 topics and all these different topic areas that everybody in the room is aware of, and then talk about kind of different levels of expertise relative to it. And then the idea behind it is that there's a section on theory, and then there's a portion that's on practice and kind of context relative to financial planning. But I didn't want them to be separate. So I didn't want the first half to be theory and the second half to be practice. But I really wanted them to be together. I really wanted there to be a section on theory that would be outlining some basic concept, and then show some sort of vignette that talked about where it occurred and what the CFP professional did relative to it. So essentially, you see what our mission is, so I won't go over that, but we really think that this idea of building this body of knowledge is critical, and it's certainly critical in a very young discipline. You know, CFPBOARD's been around for 27 years now, and that's not a long time, certainly with regard to an academic discipline. Now, you could trace that back further in looking at home economics and whatnot, but there isn't that long tradition of research in this discipline. We have great people doing research. We have great people at this institution and in this room doing research, but we haven't been doing it a long time. And so part of that is a challenge, certainly, as we take our place at the table on campus, but part of it's an opportunity too, because with a new discipline, there's also a malleability there as we kind of set that direction for new research. So Wiley published it at 735 pages. Every time I visit a campus, I'll bring one, and I regret that it's that long because it's heavy. I think it's like 3.5 pounds. But it's an all-inclusive book about everything that we've done. It's a chapter per topic, so it's about 6 or 8 pages. And there were 22 contributors that were very much representative of the 3 areas of practice and academia and research. It needed to be representative of a practitioner-based profession. And as our graduate programs grow, I think it's becoming more obvious that getting a doctoral degree in financial planning is a major challenge. And any practitioner-based profession, I think, is a challenge. And the reason why it is because you've got to be really strong in 3 areas. You've got to be able to do research, you've got to be able to teach, and you've got to be able to engage practice in a meaningful way. And that doesn't happen in a lot of other disciplines. And so the people that are coming out of these programs, They have to be special individuals as researchers, to ask questions that are pertinent and relevant to practice, but also be able to engage practice and think about new ways of improving it for everyone's benefit. So we have 78 topics that are part of our requirements. We do a very intense job task analysis that is several thousand CFP professionals are asked what it is that they do. How many of you ever participated in the job task analysis that we do? Anyone in here? One person, Dr. Sharp. So we essentially send this huge survey out, and we're getting ready to do it in the next couple of months for the next edition. And we ask practitioners, what is it that you're doing? And what levels of what competencies are necessary to serve clients? And then we base our topic list off of that. And there's all different other metrics that are used in that. But it's quite relevant as we try to do it every 5 years. So it's quite timely. So those 78 topics that came from that were part of this book, and looking at what a financial planner needs to know, what a financial planner does, and when a financial planner needs to do it. And one of the reasons why the book is so long is because it's written for multiple audiences, and that goes back to that idea of theory and practice. So part of the challenge I think that a lot of our faculty have is making connections across topic areas. So if you take a class that's in estate planning, it's very difficult for a student to make connections across to tax and investments. In all disciplines, doesn't matter if it's financial planning or anything, we kind of have a very siloed approach for a lot of different reasons. And certainly thinking about the breadth of subject areas in financial planning, we need to try to make those connections. So one of the things that we did in the book, and one of the things that we're certainly encouraging in our program oversight, is showing explicit connections across the curriculum, seeing how investments and tax are related. And we've got to be explicit about it, or the students won't make those connections. So you see that certainly from a holistic perspective throughout the book. We define certain elements of this and kind of present a historical overview of what the topic is, and defining it, and why is it relevant to practice, thinking about someone who's a student and first starting out. One of the things that we're doing this year, which is a major change in our policy, is the notion of student-centered learning objectives. So anybody that works on a campus is certainly knows about student-centered learning objectives. But we've had a resource document for a couple of years, but we haven't really pushed that agenda much. Now, most of our universities are incorporating them, and for those of you that don't know what those are, it essentially just says what a student should be able to do at the end of a class. It's very student-centered, as opposed to what it is that I'm going to teach if I'm a teacher. So what we're trying to do is make a real connection as far as what the individual can do, and then assessing that as we move forward with the exam. So seeing a connection between our ed and our exam requirement, which I think is going to be really helpful, particularly to our degree-seeking students. One of the things that one of my areas of research was on expertise. So why are individuals expert performers in a given discipline, and why are some not? And there's all kinds of different theories about that. Some people talk about 10,000 hours of deliberate practice, and there's all kinds of other different models. But we used a model that kind of looked at context and time to determine how individuals become experts. So in the book, what you'll see, or what you may have seen, is of those 78 topics, what should an entry-level person or a beginner be able to do in a specific context? What should someone that's competent be able to do? And what should an expert be able to do? So in talking to some of the firms especially, one of the things they talk about is this idea of mentorship, and how can they go about making individuals better at what it is that they do. And one of the challenges, and I was talking about it at lunch today, is a lot of individuals define success obviously by money, and certainly in this discipline. But there are other things that we're thinking about from a quantitative perspective to define success, and having strategies and whatnot for that. So we see this as a great opportunity to provide mentorship within practice. We have 159 vignettes in this book, and those are contexts. So it was really important to say how these notions are illustrated in practice. So they're specific. They're mini cases is what they are, and they talk about individuals and their scenario, and then what a financial planner would do relative to it. one of the things that it was really important to us is that those vignettes were representative of the American population. And certainly our mission at CFP Board is to serve the public. We wanted the public to be represented there. So it was about different financial situations, different family structures, and very, very diverse, as we see that to be very, very important. The second edition focuses entirely on the second part of the book focuses on the financial planning process and those steps, and gets into, again, vignettes and techniques relative to completing those steps and why they're important. It was real important that we weren't prescriptive about specific techniques that must be used, but rather talking about tools that could be used to achieve those techniques. So we're working on the second edition right now, which I actually think is far more interesting than the first edition. I could have slipped ahead on those slides, but we need to get CE credit. So the second, I really think that in 5 or 10 years, we'll look back on the first edition and say, gosh, this was really, really boring, because it really wasn't very innovative. It wasn't forward thinking. And the second edition, I think you're going to see a lot of changes. So we're heavy focused on areas such as financial therapy and psychology, bringing some of those disciplines into financial planning, as we think are very, very important. Decision-making theory and whatnot. So we've started some of those initial chapters, and it's been a real challenge, because what we're doing is we'll have a psychologist write one chapter focused entirely on some sort of decision-making theory or whatnot, and then have practitioners do the following chapter and talk about specifically why this is relevant to financial planning practice. Counseling, sociology, reflective practice, all of these topics, all these areas as really, really important and hopefully forward-thinking as we move forward with the second edition. The second edition is slated to be finished in July of next year, and I couldn't be more excited to see it come out. So I'm happy to take questions about engagement of practice or what we're doing at CFP Board, or I can certainly talk about the book.